Welcome to another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Higher Line podcast. I have a new friend, Tatiana. I always want to say it like I'm a Russian. Tatiana Whitlock of Tatiana Whitlock Training in Context.
That's it.
LLC or something probably on the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in Maine today?
Yes, I am. And it's finally
right.
fall up here. It's gorgeous.
So I wanted you to come on and we'll talk about fall up there because I'm jealous I'm not up there. My sister's up there right now visiting my other sister. We talked about that on the phone the other day. Mm-hmm. That is a beautiful state. You started a firearm training company, and I think it'd be a good discussion for the folks listening that are into not just training, but entrepreneurism, because you are successful in a crowded market space with a background that shouldn't support success. Would you agree with that?
Definitely took a divergent path going into firearms from my upbringing. Absolutely.
Tell us about that a little bit. Your family had a business.
So my family has always been, we're all entrepreneurs. Almost every single member of my family has started, owns, operates multiple businesses over the course of our careers in our respective industries and fields. And we are all, in essence, black sheep, artists, engineers, musicians, you name it. We all kind of took that kind of artistic and full immersion learning and deep dive into all of our interests. So for me and my family, that I chose to do firearms coming from a background of fine art. I have a degree in fine art from Rhode Island School of Design. And after spending my professional career after college in trade show booth design development, some building stuff, but primarily in plastics injection molding and manufacturing, when I showed an interest in this world, they were a little bit bewildered, very supportive, but quite bewildered by this whole entrepreneurial, exploration into, I call it an athletic pursuit of firearms. The one parallel that my background offered to the firearms community was that I did grow up in the world of martial arts. From the age of 10 on up, I studied a variety of different styles and intermittently a bunch of different other styles through college, and then thereafter coming back home to Maine from Rhode Island. So I've always had that combatives element in my everyday life. So that wasn't too much of a shock for them. But leaving the manufacturing realm and corporate realm to pursue learning shooting, which came first, that was a little bit of a, oh my gosh, okay, we support you, but what are you doing? Like, okay, we'll babysit while you go to gun camp in Colorado. All right. That created an interesting momentum. And one of the things that, many of the business savvy skills that I've always been surrounded with are, bottom line up front. What are you interested in? Cut out all of the fluff as much as possible. See where your interests are strongest and pursue them passionately. Mm-hmm. And that allows you to get to the heart of what drives you much faster than kind of an open-ended hobbyist's approach to any pursuit. And that's something that we grew up learning very quickly. So going from being a student to being an educator was not something I had in the career path. This is not something, what I'm doing now isn't something that I knew would become a full-time job when I began it. But
so you were just studying and learning and going down that path and then got to the point where teaching became a natural progression or next step.
Mm-hmm. There was a demand. And, as a business person, you create a product, a material, a process based on market interest and demand. So the inquiries were coming in stronger than inquiries to do other type of design work. I was like, all right, there's a viable opportunity here. Let's see what that looks like. However, I did spend about 2.5 years studying from a, let's say, the lens of an apprentice. I would go to classes and study the teachers as much as the material for myself.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah. So I had 2 sets and still have 2 sets of notebooks before I went and decided to do this for real. I have what I'm learning for myself, and then notes and points of interest, delivery methods, studying the instructor's ability to communicate this information effectively, watching how they interacted with different students and why, the tactics they chose and
The
why.
interesting thing about that is your, or the observer, in this case, the observer may be enamored by an instructor and say, okay, this guy or gal's got an amazing ability to communicate, but to everybody else, they suck, right? So you have to be able to parse the information and have an understanding of how the average adult works or
Exactly.
learns. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not telling you, I'm just commenting on that. You get it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when people ask me to, provide feedback on their interest in becoming an instructor, that's really where the conversation needs to begin. How much time have you spent as a student for yourself? And how much time have you spent at a program studying to become an instructor? And those are two very different mindsets to develop and points of observation to pursue and dive into. So
I get that question probably once a day.
Yeah.
And it's in some ways it's insulting to hear that, but I'll ask folks, well, how many classes, or not even classes, because I think in this community we get in this path where it's classes. I go to classes, but that's not really it. Like you said, studying martial arts and practicing on one's own time. And if your path is to be an instructor, then it's not just show up. I got 10 weekends a year. I go and I do these things. It's an endeavor, but I'll ask, how often are you training, or who are you training with, and where are you going? And
oh gosh.
and
Well,
I can't afford that. Well, then you probably aren't going to be an instructor.
Everybody thinks that we get rich doing this job, and the answer is no. This is one facet, and being an educator is one facet of what it means to be full-time in the firearms community. As a participant, and the only way to make this a real viable career path in the firearms community as an independent business owner and trainer is to have your training business, have some consulting components to that, design and create, which again is my background. So offering those services on a contracted basis to a number of different manufacturers within the space is another piece of what I do. And then I'm also very actively engaged in the marketing components, because having come from a consumer side and a functional side, as well as from the manufacturing side, and then going on 4 years now of digital marketing experience in the firearms training community, that allows you to go in and have a real contribution and conversation with different brands in a viable and lucrative way. So everybody's like, oh, you're going to be a millionaire if you go and teach people to shoot guns. And the answer is no. You teach because you love it and you're passionate about working with people, not going out and showing off what you know that you can do. So because this isn't something that affords us, $50,000 a year to go and take every class that we want to take, how you invest your own time is something that is spent very wisely. So I just came back from Tampa and had the great opportunity to work with Super Dave Harrington down there for 4 days. And that was the kind of investment that I expect to be making with other people that I admire over the next year to year and a half, going and pursuing one-on-one time, really deep diving into specific skill sets at a cadre level or instructor development level, and building specific components that I feel that I'd like to continue to learn within.
I just talked to Dave about that. I commented about this with you on the phone, but to the listeners, you guys that listen probably have heard me talk about Dave numerous times, one of my mentors and friends. Dave paid Tatiana a very high compliment. Actually, I think he was probably a little bit put off, like, damn, this chick's shooting too good. Yeah, it was funny listening to him. But that is the kind of stuff you have to do. It's a big nut you've got family. Most people do, to get away from family and get out and shoot guns. And it's hard for people to justify that when you don't see at the end of it a pot of gold. That said, though, you can make tons of money in any business if you do the business right. I mean, I support my family. I'm not going to sit here and say how much money I make or anything like that, but I wouldn't do it if I wasn't making enough money to sustain the lifestyle that I want.
Oh, absolutely. We're not 501c3s. We have bills to pay, children to feed. Life is life. And there's plenty of people who would love for you to give that knowledge away and almost expect you to in some instances. but there is significant value here. And that comes as a result of what we've invested in building up what we know and how we know how to deliver it.
Yeah. It's a very interesting time. One of my dovetails into this world is Second Amendment education. And it's become like a very bastardized term, like the 2A community. And I'm not part of a 2A community. I'm an American, that just is like one piece of our Constitution is the way I look at it. I'm talking with a young man today, and he's having a really hard time wrapping his head around gun laws. And I said, well, I'd go study the history of firearm laws in America. And he said, all I care about is 1791. That's when the Second Amendment was ratified. And I said, well, it'll be pre-Second Amendment and post-Second Amendment. There's like 11,000 laws before 1830 pertaining to, like, I think 1784, Boston outlawed loaded firearms in one's dwelling. I never knew that until I recently read that. But people have this like gross interpretation of what the law and what our customs was in America. Anyway, where I'm going with this is now there's this huge explosion. In the 70s, there wasn't women leaving the workplace to go teach firearms. In the 1930s, there wasn't women going and learning how to shoot guns. I think society taught people these things or didn't. Mm-hmm. And now we've got this huge explosion of knowledge that didn't exist, or it was condensed into a small amount of the populace. What do you say about that?
I would agree. I think we're coming out of a time of our culture and society has lost a great volume of knowledge. And I noticed this before I started shooting, because my son is 9. That's how I know how long I've been doing this. I've been shooting for the past 8 years. Okay. I'd never picked up a handgun before that. And my ex-father-in-law was a Vietnam veteran. He did a number of tours in Vietnam, was one of the last waves of people to leave when we brought everyone home. He never talked about it. And the whole family had this great pride that he was a Marine. Absolutely this phenomenal pride in this man and who he was and what he did. But not a single one of his kids pursued that path because it wasn't something that he taught back to them. And none of them had any knowledge about firearms. So they lived in the city, they were city folk, and they knew nothing about hunting, or it was like a taboo subject. And I see that quite frequently in a lot of communities that I visit, where we are 2, sometimes 3 generations now removed from people growing up having an understanding of what it meant to have a firearm in the house and what it meant to go hunting, or what the consequences of improper use really meant. So we are reteaching a culture that was always ours, but we seem to have, based on this is a general observation, I don't have data to support this, but it seems like
If you don't have data, don't say it.
Right? But it's an observation that I've noticed, right, coast to coast, truly.
Yeah.
Where
it's definitely it's a societal and customary and ethical kind of an issue.
It is.
Just like in 1900, every mom had some chickens running around in her garden. Right. Fast forward to 2020, not every mom has a garden, let alone chickens running around it. It was just normal. And now, if you went to your friend's house, you'd say, oh my God, you got chickens.
And you needed a permit to get the chicken.
Yeah.
But no, the reality is we're bringing back knowledge. And I'm seeing a lot of that result, not from the guys, but from the mothers. And I'm seeing whole families come to the range as a result of mom having taken an intro class or a women's own class. And then what you see is 2 weeks later, she, her kids, her husband, they're all coming in as a family to take that class or participate in a safety day at the range. So while the knowledge might be there, the whole household gets engaged as a result of mom deciding to jump in and experience this for the first time.
Yeah, it's a very interesting. I think some people do that. Maybe something bad happened, and so they get scared. But I think some people just use it because it's a good old-fashioned family good time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like going to the movies, or some people, I think, maybe some anti-gunners that hear that and cringe. But, of course, we're not condoning immoral or unrighteous use of guns. So it can be a very good thing.
hmm Well, my first range experience was kind of funny because I drove into my very first all women's class, and it was an NRA Women on Target clinic in this itty bitty little range tucked into the middle of the woods on an ungraded gravel road, questioning all your life choices driving down there. I was joking, you could almost hear the banjo music playing in the background. And
Is
you
there
drive.
banjo music in the woods of Maine?
Oh my gosh, we've got a huge bluegrass community up here.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely. My grandfather's in the Bluegrass Hall of Fame. Come on now. We know our banjo.
From Maine?
Yeah, from Maine.
Very cool. Didn't know that.
But I drove up and there's this, log cabin of a range building and some old stood up, post berms built at different distances. And it kind of looked a little rickety, awning covering. And all the gentlemen that were there to greet us ladies had white pendulous beards and big belt buckles and truckers caps. And,
Funny.
they looked the part. The red flannel, they dressed in uniform. But the experience that I had didn't match what I expected to receive from them. And that made all the difference. So I think they were welcoming. They didn't talk down. They didn't use sweetheart, honey, all that language you'd expect.
Now, is it wrong to say sweetheart or honey to a lady? I mean, I am so tired of I go to that local college, and one of the instructors is like a 64-year-old retired fire chief. And I'll watch him interact with ladies in the school, and maybe it's his age, but like a lady left and he said, "Hey, sweetheart, I'll see you on Monday." And I thought, man, if I said that, somebody'd look at me and file like a complaint with the school. But anyway.
Well, it's all who you are, I think, in the delivery that makes the difference. But what I appreciated from those guys was they didn't use that type of language in a belittling or a intellectually dimming way. So that was great. And they made all the difference. They are the reason that I fell in love with this whole thing, because that first experience was so wonderful. But that's where we have an opportunity with the folks who are anti or uneducated, shall we say, to allow them a first opportunity to experience a range culture that does not meet their perceived expectations of something negative and violent and loud and aggressive, but that's something that's actually welcoming and fun and lighthearted and calm and in control and safe. That's a game changer. But you got to get experience.
I do all ladies classes, and we're loud and aggressive and violent. I actually tell them, you are a lioness, be violent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I make them also feel safe. We have a little champagne at each break time to keep nerves calm.
Little sedatives, because that's a good combo.
That's a joke to anybody listening. I'm kidding.
Well, you never know. The ladies that are coming to your class are coming to your class for that experience.
Probably. I tell dudes all the time, I like if there's some guys that are, you've had students, I'm sure, that just don't want to pay attention, or they're looking at you, but then they're not doing what you're telling them. And I tell guys all the time, give me 50 women that never shot versus 5 dudes that'll never listen, because they pay attention and like want to engage in the minutia and nuances. And the dudes are all like ready to go take a break so they can show guys the junk that's in the back of their truck and talk about whatever. And the ladies are like taking notes, and yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
which is important, because those are the gals that are usually with the kids that need those skills. Is gals okay? Is that dehumanizing?
I'm not one of those gals that would think.
I'm kidding, by the way. No, but that's a I hear that stuff all the time. I've never seen it, because nobody that I am friends with or pal around with is that ignorant. But where I get it is guys will send their wives, "I can't teach her anything." And I said, "I bet you can." And it's not because I'm great and they're not, but just that's like a big issue. I think husbands or boyfriends with their women.
Well, you know each other too well. And you can read all those subconscious cues, body language, everything. Whether you can articulate what you're perceiving or not, each other too well. So you can't break from that. It's very hard to break from that in this kind of learning environment. And then most, educators, I'll say, because I've seen some wives at the range with significant others, and it's the same story. So it's not just the guys, but because you know your partner too well. And this goes for parent-child relationships too. You may not be the best communicator of what you think you know. Let's start there. And then, are you able to separate and wear the different hat of this is someone I know and love, and this is someone whom I need to work with objectively? And most people don't have that ability, and that's fine.
Back to that adult learning stuff we were talking about earlier. I have a hard time with that sometimes. We do a class with couples, and I started doing it's wife swapping. That's the drill. And we swap partners. And it's not just women being taught by men, it's vice versa. But we're doing coach and shooter drills, and you with somebody else, and it's what it does is you get like this completely different dynamic where people barely know each other, but now they're having to have like in-depth conversations about what's happening. And they get really, really deep into stuff that wouldn't have happened if it was the husband and wife talking, or boyfriend and girlfriend. Yeah, I dig that. What's your claim to fame? Why would somebody come train with you? And not saying that in a manner of versus the 9,000 other people every day that hang up their Facebook shingle as a tactical badass fire instructor.
Well, I'm like most Americans. I'm not law enforcement. I'm not military. And I did get into this when I was 6 years old. So I don't come with this assumption that it takes a lifetime to build this. I'm like a lot of the average American shooter who's going out there, who loves to plank, who enjoys time with their family on the range, who wants their kids to learn this, and then is also very, very aware of what it means to be a citizen and carrying concealed.
I dig it.
Practices what I preach and carries everywhere I conceivably can legally.
Where do you live in Maine? What city or near?
I'm in the Portland area, so southernmost portion of Maine.
You guys have constitutional carry for residents, right?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, I thought so. What do you carry?
Summer carry is a very tricked out Glock 43, and then winter carry is a Glock 19.
So do you feel that in the winter, bad guys are tougher and need more bullets, or?
No, when I can carry the big gun, I always carry the big gun. Okay.
What kind of tricked outness? What's tricked out?
They're both agency arms guns, so they're Guccified.
Guccified? Funny. Dots on either of them or no?
I've got a dot on the 19. I've got one of the Hollow Suns, and I've been really enjoying it.
Yeah, that's a nice sight.
Yep.
I'm not a gear guy. I know what the optic is, but I don't go I shoot stock stuff. I'm a
design nerd, but at this point, I'm also a very visual person coming from a fine art background. I just want a red dot. I just want a dot. Please don't make it complicated. Just give me a dot. So I like the Hollow Sun because it gives me that single dot, or the kind of the zombie reticle with the circle around it, which I've actually started to enjoy using as well.
Are you saying that like Trijicon and the other dot makers don't just make a red dot?
No, we make a dot, but sometimes they're amber. Everybody's getting into green. I mean, I could go hard in the paint with the nerdifying and the technical stuff, but
some science shows green's easier for our eyes to see in varying light conditions.
I've seen that data, and my personal preference, and I think this is old dog, new trick concept in my own brain, but I learned on an aim point, red dots on a rifle with an aim point, and that's what my brain likes to lock in. Your brain
picked that out, yeah.
So I prefer to be as consistent across all my sites as possible. If I'm going to do a fiber, it's going to be a red fiber. If I see that red, that's the visual anchor point that I'm used to, that I've trained with for thousands of hours, and that's what my eyes want to lock in on.
Sure. I agree with that. I've because of my job, and we do so much work with various people and agencies, I shoot a lot of different guns, which goes against what we teach. But I would always go back to the same site as like my go-to. Yeah, that makes sense. So do you work with agency or just shoot their guns?
I've worked with them for a number of years, and I shoot their guns, and I've enjoyed both relationships of just working with the equipment and then working with them professionally. They were a great outfit to work with.
Oh, cool. So you said a little bit about some marketing stuff. I've seen you in, I guess, photo spreads. You've done
Yeah.
some stuff where you've been. Who did I recently see you with? Holding a gun. What was it in? What was it?
Gosh, I don't know. There's so much out there. Been in Ballistic magazine.
That's probably what it was.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know. There's just so many pictures of me on the internet holding guns.
Wait for that one, but-
That's what I heard. I couldn't even name them all.
Well, it's fun. It's like when you ask my kids, when they get asked, what does your mom do? My daughter's decided that depending on who she's answering, she's 10, by the way. Either she'll say, mommy's a writer, or mommy's a teacher, or if she really wants to brag, she's like, my mommy's a model. I'm like, oh God, that is not going to go well. When they Google and they see my very
Guns.
little town. Well,
That's okay.
Oh, yeah.
So your company, Context,
Mm-hmm.
in context, that's become kind of a buzzword the last few years. Contextual handgun, contextual shooter, contextual parent. Talk about it.
Well, I'm
These are
disappointed.
all different names that I've heard people calling classes.
Yeah. Well, I think that unfortunately I hooked into that word way before it became a cool kid thing. And now I'm like, I cringe when I hear it along with, the word.
It's not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing, but the word is now being taken out of context in and of itself, which drives me crazy.
It's kind of like Second Amendment.
Yeah, it's become a buzzword. And
Ooh, you know another one of those, not to sidetrack you, proprioception.
Oh,
I start hearing guys talk about proprioception, and I just like listen, and they're like, they don't have a clue what they're talking about, but that word sounds cool. I use that.
photopic vision. Yeah, that's becoming the fancy pants way of talking about low light.
Yeah.
Words and things. No,
anyway, so context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I started doing a lot of the shoot house work with Pat Rogers back in the day, which for me wasn't that long ago before he
Rest
passed
in Pete.
away. Absolutely. A lot of the realities that the epiphanies that came to me were, man, if I'd only have learned that skill with this in mind, it would have made so much more sense.
Yeah.
If I had learned this, just best practice techniques, understanding why and when I would use it, being me going home to my house in the suburb, wow, that would have made all the difference. Or I would have locked that in a lot faster. Or that moment where he was talking about making sure your equipment's ready from this room to the next room and why. I'd had teachers say, oh, you got to top off your guns, da, 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 da. But when I had the reasons why, I'll never not do that again.
Yeah.
So how do you absorb that information? If it can be relatable to your actual life, that bridged the gap for me from the cool kid ninja-fied, super athletic run and gun stuff that was
Another word overused. Ninja.
Ninja. Mm-hmm. And I use that with all of the current stuff that goes with ninja. Right? But that, that's what it looked like, transitioning from primary to secondary weapon systems and no look speed reholsters and know your gear and you shouldn't have to. Yeah. Then I get thrown into a PAC class and I'm like, wow, this is awesome. Why? Because it's real. It has meaning to me. And no, I'm never going to be running around my house in full on multicam because I don't. And I'm never going to have a plate carrier on and 6 other guys with me to go through the house to find my kids. That's the case. But the concepts were there and the motivations were real. Therefore, the techniques made a lot more sense. And so the programs that I teach aren't necessarily superfied run and gun programs. We're not going to go storm a fortress together. I'm not going to teach you to clear your house and all of that stuff. I'm going to introduce you to the basics in a manner that it's going to prepare you for those programs with credible individuals so that you go and you're successful and you're not fighting the skill sets. You're able to apply them in those spaces. And that's the goal of making those essential foundational thought processes, emotional control and stress management, and then the technical stuff with the gun. Lay that groundwork at a foundational level, somebody in their first couple years of firearm shooting who want to carry concealed, who want to learn how to, make sure their home is safe, truly, not just take a weekend force-on-force class with their local, superhero. Those people, if I can build them to the point where they can go and then be, wow, get the phone call, wow, T, I took that class, and you know what, this, and this that we just covered, I used every bit of it, thank you. That's what I want to hear. That's the
I dig it. I would add to that a weekend class with a local superhero, no joke, is better than nothing, as long as it's rooted in reality.
That's the key. I've got too many people in my local area who I've had to undo a lot of problems. I've had, and there's charlatans in every industry.
I don't think that they know they're charlatans.
Some of them do, and some of them don't.
You think they know?
Some of them are riding a wave of some good marketing, and that's upsetting. But I've had one example. I had a number of ladies in my Girl and a Gun chapter here in Maine who are members of some faith-based parishes and organizations. Us have worked with separate outfits who came in and did active shooter force-on-force training. And all that happened in that experience with them was terrify them, make them feel even more unprepared, and not in a, I now know what I don't know.
That makes me want to punch people.
And do an inappropriate amount of pain reinforcement. So that stuff makes me angry because...
What was that person's background?
I won't go into it because I'm not going to skyline a local person, but
okay,
it's something that I haven't heard from other parts of the country as well,
Yeah, that's all. It is all over. But my point is, I don't think that dude doesn't fully believe that he's a badass teaching badassery. I know a former Navy SEAL, and I have no problem skylining him because he does it to me all the time. I won't say his name, but he teaches people to wear brass knuckles when they're in places where like probability of hitting people might pop up. Just put the things on in their pocket and wear a mouth guard. And I'm like, where are you that you like literally, like if you're a bouncer, okay, I got a mouth guard, some stuff's about to go down, I don't want my bridge broken. Or you're a cop and you're about to go through a door and you know that you have a probability of busting your teeth. But like if you're somewhere that you think you need a mouth guard, why don't you just leave,
Yeah, that would be wise.
But he legitimately believes his bullshit. That was my point.
Drinking their own Kool-Aid, that's a problem. That's a problem.
But to them, it's not Kool-Aid. It's well, this lady or this guy is nice and they're teaching people some stuff, but it ain't what I got.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
So, the amount of work that needs to be done to bring those individuals who expressed interest in how to manage a very scary event in their environment where they work, where they worship, or where they live. And now we've got to undo all of this really bad brain stuff that they just got a dose of, when they could have been fairly competent with the right amount of training and layered teaching. So that's frustrating. That's one of my biggest frustrations. So yes, something is better than nothing, but be an educated consumer and vet.
Yeah, I mean that's got to be predicated on that it's something that's factual, not nonsense.
Yes.
Like a lot of martial arts, if you've studied martial arts, there's a lot of martial arts that are healthy, but have no real value against any person with any kind of motivation to hurt you. And people go like, my 6-year-old has a black belt. No, he doesn't. no, but that's pretty normal. Right. Every one of us knows a kid that's in grade school that's got a black belt because the local dojo gave him one, and that kid grows up to be a college girl or boy and thinks that they actually have some valuable skills, and in reality they don't. Right. Yeah. And it's the same thing with this training, and that's the buyer beware thing. People need to. I don't just go online and look at a restaurant review and see this place sucks, the servers sucked, and absolutely believe it. Some people do. I don't. Do you? I'd like to go and find out for myself, unless they were like, there are cockroaches crawling off my plate, but I'll call peers, I'll call people. If you're in a small enough pool of bodies, you've got to know somebody who's worked with that person and get real feedback, but also get real feedback from somebody who isn't a peer of yours, but from somebody who should know a little better, because first love is first love, and people fall for, they'll go hard in the paint guru style with their first firearms trainer. That happens a lot. Experience, but it's your only experience. You don't know, you have nothing to gauge or compare this against. Yeah, there's a lot of dopamine tied to those memories. Yes. Lots and lots of that. That's a good point. And this is a very weird genre of our society. There's like some of the finest human beings I've ever met in my life and some of the crummiest.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Your point about asking somebody, it's such a tight knit community. I'm not going to bust anybody out like you won't either, but you can't throw a pebble and not hit somebody in this community that knows half the people that you know in some way, shape, or form.
right.
And like if we opened up our Rolodexes, I'm sure we could just swap cards and we'd still have all the numbers we needed.
Right.
And somebody like that usually doesn't get very successful, at the very least, outside of their community,
Mhm.
because I won't lie. I'm not going to tell somebody, oh, that guy over in Portland's a piece of garbage, but I'll tell you this, a friend of mine that lives there told me a story, and that's all I need to know. But,
Yeah.
call and you can usually ask people questions too.
Yeah.
What do you think? Who was your mentors? Oh, I learned everything I needed to know in the Navy SEALs. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Which there's plenty of that.
I have a nephew who is very successful in his digital business. And as an adult, he is now pursuing an interest in firearms. And he's collecting all the cool kid stuff. I mean, he is
cool.
just sending me baby pictures of the new gun. He's so excited. And I'm like, oh, it's fantastic. You want to call me the next time you're thinking about buying an AR? I could lead you in the right direction,
Right.
So he's starting to realize that his auntie, who changed his diapers once upon a time, actually knows what she's talking about in the gun space, which is kind of quite entertaining. But he sent me a text message the other day saying, hey, I'm going to take a class with XYZ outfit. I was like, I don't know those folks. Send me an email. And he sent me an email. He was all excited. It's going to be kind of like the first couple classes I took. And he's going to run primary, secondary weapon systems. He needs a plate carrier. He needs all this stuff. And I'm like, all right, so it's fun camp. You're going to fun camp. That's great. Fun camp with guns can be super fun. I personally enjoy that a lot, but that's what you're getting. Don't think you're going to come home and be an instant concealed carry amazing tactician here. It's not how that works. And I went to this website, and there was no information about the instructors. There was no, this is who you're working with, this is who you're learning from, which was a big red flag for me. And, he expanded a little bit more about who they were and who they trained with. And I was like, okay, so the next time you want to sign up for a class in your area, you want to travel to something, here's my list of the people that I would love to take a class with. You pick one of those dudes and I am there. We'll go train side by side. I will take that class with you. But, local outfits, there are some wonderful people who just don't have the bandwidth or the lifestyle to hit the road like you and I do. And they can be fantastic. And then there are folks who are, hang a shingle, claim whatever credentials or shooting classes on their list of amazing resumes. And you really worry a little bit about what's going down and then what kind of safety is being managed and that kind of thing.
Now just thinking about this, so I've got the back page of our course curriculum is a list of 55 people, and it's not the end all be all. I just know every one of them personally and have sent rounds into the dirt with them. So I can unequivocally say, if you spend your money with them, you won't be wasting it. And people look at it and they're like, well, what about Tatiana? I don't know. I've never shot with her. I'm sure she's great. And I could say it'd probably be good, but because I haven't trained with her, I won't put it there.
Right.
But just your comment about local people, I guarantee if they are good, they know somebody I know.
Yes.
Because if they didn't figure this stuff out on their own, and if they did, then they're probably not that good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sometimes being inventive is not a good thing.
Not in this. Yeah. There's too many interweaving lives that nobody's come to any conclusion on their own that has any solid skill set. You're talking about back to the context base. It seems like in this community now, we have so many folks, just like we talked about, they're honing in on certain words. There's people that hone in on a skill set that is taken out of context. For example, doing attack reload or attack mag. You brought up Pat telling you why to do that. There was a reason for it. And I see people do that, like with loading a rifle or a carbine after a transition. and they do it because it looks cool or because a herd of buffalo are about to come over the hill or the Russians are about to land. But like the reality is it's a good practice to manage your ammunition. And like people don't think about that stuff. And I've seen so many instructors fixate on that stuff lately. And I'm sure it's always been, everything is cyclical in every education sector. What are your comments on that?
Oh, absolutely. In the 8 years that I've been doing this, from that first Women on Target clinic to now, I've seen some big evolutions in our training community. Huge. I mean, we've gone from, I can't just got off, was a contractor overseas and I'm home and I'm in law enforcement. Now I'm teaching pieces of what kept me alive through my career to, if you're not a Navy SEAL, you shouldn't be a trainer. And these are, I'm not saying this critically, I'm saying this is just observations I've seen as I have gone and through this evolution of stuff, to, law enforcement officers' attitudes in the instructional role with civilians across the country and how widely that varies. And then we come down to the techniques. And from the obvious ones they're low-hanging fruit, but the scan and assess being one that has evolved radically. Thank the Lord, it's evolved radically from, the hair flip, whiplash, scan, assess, kind of after action choreography into something that's actually meaningful in teaching situational awareness.
Chris Costa is a friend of mine, and every time I talk to him, I say, hold on a second, I got to find my magazine. I just whipped across the living room doing a reload. And shut up! Every time I talk to him, I say it. I can't.
Chris is a friend. And, yes. And, that was a lucrative technique for a while. I mean, that was the cool kid thing to do for a while. But the world has changed. What we're doing has changed, and why. And it's interesting to see it move and shift. It's also been an observation, being so new to this. I don't come with a lot of preconceived notions that folks who've been in it for a long time have. So I've been able to notice the language that this instructor or this speaker is using is typical of late 80s. Or the information being shown here, the techniques being shown here are like Fast Company 90s material. We're still doing things in this way. So it's given me the ability to look at that and go, no, this person doesn't know what they're doing. They're a product of their last class. They're a product of when their training for their work stopped and then they started doing the work. So, I don't have the same attitudes about, oh, that's dated or that's old. It's like, no, what is this time capsule of information and what is it from? And if you can appreciate it for what it is, with the equipment that was being used, the context of when and where it was being applied, what kind of gear they had at their disposal, when did that evolution stop? And then what was the next step? So, why are we doing things the way we're doing them now? And Greg Elfritz recently put out an article about knowing your history, and talked a lot with Dave about that too. How can you intelligently, and this is a deficit on mine, this is a big blind spot. I need to buy more of the old gun books. I need to get more of that material. Yeah, my library is back there and it's growing. I need a new bookcase.
I probably have upstairs in the main office, there's probably 500 books, but I keep these here because I pull them out often.
Right.
And as you're talking, it made me think of, where is it? It made me think of this one right here. Phil Jordan, one of the greatest gunfighters in American law enforcement history, shooting a 6-shooter, and everything he taught and knew worked, and it still works today. And none of those guys that are dead said, his freaking 1930s tactics. Like they still died or quit. And that's the part that's kind of funny too. Yeah. It's like the scan and assess thing. I have a speech I do in class, and I was taught that by some guys that were very successful in winning gunfights. And so you listen to it and you say, okay, that makes good sense. And it's not wrong. It's just not always right. Like, but if you don't know, and you're not going to tell somebody that's done something you haven't, that they're wrong. So you fixate on it. But then especially in the law enforcement community, anything, I had a guy yesterday, I hear this constantly. This was exactly what he said. I could probably read it. It's in a message. He said, my department in Tennessee had a gentleman, you've heard this story, but you probably heard it from a different department, that they found dead next to his squad car with a handful of his brass in his fist. And I said, well, actually, that story came from California Highway Patrol. And I have yet to ever find anybody tell me a factual story about this, where a officer dropped his spent revolver casings into his hand and put them in his pocket. But we've all heard that. You've heard that story, right? Mm-hmm. And so then it just becomes like a dogmatic fact. And he's like, well, they told us that at the academy. Why would they lie? Because somebody told it to them. And they thought, why would they lie? Right. And it just perpetuates. And now every department, oh, a guy at our training agency, this happened. No, it didn't. It didn't happen. It did not happen, where they found this guy laying there. And I'm not being sacrilege, but it didn't happen. But people fixate on it, and then that's the way it's done. So that's the way we'll do it, and don't look any farther.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of that. And it's, again, being somebody who loves to learn as much as I've come to learn to love to teach this material, that's why we're constantly talking to each other, participating in podcasts, interviewing each other, picking each other's brains, because you're never done. And the minute you think you are, you better wake up, because you are so far behind.
Yeah.
But you can date people by the material, the stories, the language they're using. And to me, that's a marker of when they stopped learning.
It does get tiresome at times. I've got a friend that every time I'm with him, we can't just drink a beer. He'll go into some like crazy minutia, and I'm like, dude, I literally don't care what you're talking about. Like, I love you, but like, you're talking about like if I turn the gun this much at this exact time in history while my foot's turning, like, shut up, he's trying to like go so deep, and he's got pie charts and graphs, and like sometimes I think you can take that too far. Point the gun and pull the trigger. Yeah. Don't point it at yourself while you're doing that.
Why are you pointing the gun? Do you want to take that flame off a candle shot at 100 yards? Is that your life goal? Then go for the pie charts. But if you want to survive, there's no time for pie charts. So your brain has to be doing a very different body of work.
Yeah. And I think that's like, I always ask our students at the beginning of class, why are you here? What's your goal? What do you want to get out of it? And if people can't really answer that in a very finite, specific manner, they're wasting their energy. Even if it was your class, they're there for fun time if they don't really know why they're there and can't define something. Mm-hmm. I'm actually here, Tatiana, because I want you to teach me to shoot a candle flame at 100 yards.
I want to be like, go see Mr. Jerry.
Yeah, right.
Wrong class.
Right. I bet you could teach him.
I could teach a lot of things to
create. Everything that needs to happen to make that happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now you're already sending them off. You just lost money.
No, they'd enjoy the class, that's for sure. But that sparks an interesting dialogue, and that is, have you taken classes where, as a student, you found yourself in a constant flood of knowledge, data, information the entire time? Are
you asking me or just posing a question?
Asking you. You're ever on the receiving end?
So I go to a lot of things, like I just finished the 40 hours this summer with Bill Lewinsky and Force Science Institute. And that kind of stuff has nothing to do with shooting guns, right? I mean, it does, but it doesn't. And you're dealing with clinical psychologists and heart surgeons and eye doctors. So completely different stuff. So in that setting, yes, but in a shooting class, very rarely. And it's not because I know everything. I just was with my friend Pat McNamara, and I know all of his drills. And when I'm in a setting like that, I kind of just let my brain go, and I try to just be total student, and I'm not selling anybody anything. And I'm nervous because everybody expects me to do good or fairly good. So I just try to focus on myself, and I take notes. I use my phone. I've got a stylus. I'm an avid note taker. But so in that setting, I'm looking, like you said early on, at I'll watch the person speaking, and I'll watch the body language. Are people playing on their phones? Are they sick of standing in the sun? Have these been talking too long? So stuff like that is important to me, but it's not very often anymore that it's like teaching somebody to type. After they've learned to type, now can you type while talking on the phone? Can you type in Spanish? Can you type in Latin? You're still typing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Of course it does. So the premise of the question is, when people come to a program, sometimes they're coming to the program just to
So
hang
wait a
out.
minute. You were just waiting for me to shut up so you could get to your point. Sorry.
I was waiting for you to go down the rabbit hole. I totally set you up for it. You're welcome.
But did I go down any rabbit hole?
You did, but not
Okay.
not an incorrect one. So when you're in a program, you have a student that comes in and is there just because you're awesome and they've seen you on the internet and they love your show, and they don't really have a reason why. They're there because it's the cool kid thing to do and they want to check your name off the list.
Sure.
And that happens not a ton, but it's happened a couple of times of note in the past year and a half. Those people are the ones that are almost more fun to crack into, because I enjoy a class where it's a two-way street, where the instructor is presenting the material and the information, and then the students are having to engage back in the debrief, multiple throughout the drill sets. You're debriefing, and they're giving that information back. They're verifying as an instructor, one, that you've communicated the material properly, and they can articulate certain key points back to you. And you understand the absorption rate of the student. You understand if you need to expand upon certain things in the next drill set. That kind of engagement in a program I find really gratifying. And by the time you're done with a class like that, I see that the folks who didn't come with a very clearly defined desired outcome can articulate very clearly what they got and what they want next. So whether or not they came with, I want this specific skill or this specific thing, or I want you to undo this years of mess, when they can walk away reiterating your course goals from a personalized standpoint, that's the two-way street that I really enjoy.
I
and
dig that.
Types of instructors that I love to learn from. Going down and working with Dave, we did as much back and forth dialogue about what, certain drills and philosophies and techniques, what can you dissect them down into and why, as we did shooting. And that was equally as useful. And then the notebook that I've got next to me is like bursting at the seams, because all that knowledge just feeds itself.
We don't begin class until everybody's identified why they're there, because I feel that it is a complete waste of my time if they can't identify that. And I don't want to spend 2 days drawing it out of them when I can get them to verbalize it. And it usually goes something like this, like, play with me for a minute. Tatiana, why are you here?
I saw you on the internet.
That's cool. I appreciate that. It's how I pay my bills. But like, what are you hoping to get out of this? There's no way you just came here to meet, because we could have done that last night over beers with everybody else.
Well, I've got my permit, and that should be enough. But my brother said that this was a great class to take.
Okay, so you're spending the time to be here, the money, you traveled, and if we could sit down and identify something measurable that when you leave, you'll feel that you left with success, what would that look like?
Well, I've been shooting my whole life, so I'm a pretty good shooter. So probably how to clear my house.
So if we left here on Sunday and you felt that you could clear your house, you would feel that class was success for you and your investment of time. So we go down that road, and of course, nobody's an a-hole like you and just doesn't, answer the question. But that's exactly what happens. I want to shoot more accurately. Yeah. That's the main one. Well, what would identify or look to be more accurate? To be able to hit whatever I'm aiming at. So do you want to hit a candle at 500 yards with your Glock? Well, no, that'd be stupid. Yep. So I want to hit an A zone at 25 yards. Okay, in what time frame? You want to hit it? If I give you all the time in the world, we all can do that. Do you want to do it in a second from the holster? Because that'd be pretty cool. And you can do that, but like what? And so you try to identify some of that stuff, and then I think if you do that, it's half the battle. At least for them, because then their head's wrapped around I'm not telling this to you so much as the people listening. Gets them going in the mindset of why they're gathering this knowledge, and it takes them out of the thought process of people are watching me and I feel fumbly. And
exactly. And I see too that gentlemen in the classes, and right now I have about a 60-40 split, 60% women at the end of the year to 40% guys coming to my classes, open enrollment classes. typically, if it's an open enrollment class, it's predominantly male. If it's women's only class, I got some guys trying to sneak in with pink boas, and
Nice.
it's kind of fun. But
I'd do it.
the reality is that most of the women that I see coming to class, when I ask that question, have a different answer than what the gentlemen give. Gentlemen will give a very specific skill set or technical component that they want developed, and they want to walk away with feeling like they've got it, or they understand it in a much more meaningful manner.
And the women say they want to feel confident with the pistol that their husband bought them.
Either that, or they're saying, I need to transition from skill sets into confidence.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's not all necessarily emotively driven, but therein lies the difference. Women will come from it from an application into skill set perspective, and men will typically go from a skill set into motivation perspective. So we're trying to achieve the same goals, but from various sides of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
And most oftentimes, most people at I'll call it an entry-level program, you're not quite ready for a Pat Rogers or a Super Dave class, but you're working your way there. Don't yet know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And when they've plateaued, they can't even recognize that yet. So when they have plateaued, they are not even aware of how to articulate that void that they feel is there. They can't break through it. So when I recognize that in a student, it's like, all right, we're going to do a series of evaluations, figure out where your limits are, and then I know what I need. I know what I need to give you. And that often will then clarify what that goal is. So if I can't extrapolate it from them at the intros, because I'll do an intro dialogue too with everybody, it's where I get to profile them and make sure nobody's here because they're a neighbor. I've only had a couple of instances where I've had to pull someone aside after the intro and be like, this program just isn't right for you, because I don't think your motivations are in line with the goals of this class.
What do they say?
I will eject people from a program if I feel that they are not, their motivations aren't correct.
Me too.
Yeah. So, but
Never had to.
We get wonderful people coming through the class, but it's an opportunity for me to do that eval of them. And what people choose to share with you is very telling.
Yeah.
I learn as much about them as to what I need to give the material for the class. Which level or degree of complexity can I take this class based on my student body? And then we go from there.
I dig it. You've got such a disparity of people's skill sets. Folks will call and say, well, I've done pistol 1, 2, 4, carbine 11. I don't care. I don't know who any of those people are. Even if I know them, it doesn't mean anything. It's all arbitrary numbers people come up with. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting thing sorting through a group of people like that and trying to make something cohesive. So I'm always impressed with people that can do that safely. I joke with folks. I'll say, I can't say this joke because then people come to class and the joke won't work. Never mind. I'm just not even going to say it. But it's also, you're talking about the motivations of the men versus the women. It's amazing how wide that gap is from just looking, I want to run a fast drill and get a coin from Ernest Langdon, to somebody hurt me really, really bad, and I'm never going to let that happen again, and all points in between. And like you said, it's the things people will share with you. It's pretty amazing. I actually feel very fortunate when I come home after a trip to have met the people and forged relationships with most of the people that we get to meet. Because it's a very specific kind of human being that comes out and does this stuff.
Yes. Yes, it is.
You'd agree?
I agree.
Yeah.
I have the great honor, and I love this part of what I get to do. So I'm director of training for A Girl and a Gun, which is the nation's largest and fastest growing women's shooting organization. And most
sexist.
Well, we have a policy where if you live your life as a woman, you are welcome.
I'm putting a wig on and coming to that freaking event.
We have a lot of fun. A lot of the guys are pretty jealous of all the fun stuff that we get to do. But as a result of participating in that capacity with that group, I get to be all over the country and work with people of all skill levels. And when you have that very unique community coming together and you get to meet the newbies are the most fun because they don't look like anything you would expect. And they don't fit there is no bucket to put them all in and say, these are guns. people. You look like gun people. And we have people with severe disabilities, severe disabilities coming in and being very successful and very safe on the range. We have people physical or visible or invisible, let's just put it that way, challenges that they're working through. And they're outstanding. We've got, my 10-year-old daughter coming in and doing demos for us because she can go from a 10-year-old to stepping up to the line and being an adult.
Getting it done.
Everything perfect, laying it down. And when she's backed away from that, she gets to be a 10-year-old again. So, you get that. And then you have the 90-something-year-old lady who is, coming in to learn because she just needs something to do and she falls in love with it. You get the entire gamut. The professional athletes coming in, the CrossFitters, the real ninjas, the people who are training in martial arts all the time, heavily, competitively. It's so multifaceted. One of my biggest gripes about the firearms community is how compartmentalized we make ourselves within it.
Yeah. And you can just go on Facebook and look through my Facebook friends or yours, and you'll see those cliques. They all kind of coagulate.
Right. And it can be a little cult-like, depending on what clique you're in.
I think that's humans, though, isn't it?
Of course, birds of a feather and interests. Yeah. People of like interests.
Yeah.
The one unifying piece we have right now is the 2A conversation. And the more we can combine our general motivations as Americans to supporting that message, that's where I think we have an opportunity to do a lot of good.
Yeah.
We're getting painted in very specific lights, but we know how diverse we are. We get to see it. We get to see the people who come to take our classes, and they're the whole spectrum. I'll have military and law enforcement folks jump into classes of mine, and I'll have, a senior citizen and a mom and their kid in the same class. That's this class. It's fantastic.
That's super cool.
The more we can celebrate the diversity of who we are as Americans that are also gun owners, I think we have a great opportunity there. But the more we compartmentalize and chew and eat on our own,
it's like religion. Worship God in my fashion. Otherwise, you're going to some evil place, or the way you choose to marry, it makes you immoral or evil. And it's the same as religion. I agree on the common ground there, but I also remind people constantly that our founders fought tooth and nail with each other. Mm-hmm. Some of them dueled and shot each other, you know what I mean?
Yep.
There's a lot of pettiness in this business. I think unlike other businesses, I've been self-employed over 20 years, and other business ventures in business industries, some of that pettiness never existed because there wasn't so much ego wrapped up in stuff. I mean, there's some people that are physically unhealthy to look at, but they bash on somebody because of like their choice of whatever holster. Oh, that guy uses a cloth holster. Who cares? Maybe he can't afford anything else.
Right. Yeah, the gun and gear shaming is a whole show in and of itself.
It makes me angry. It makes me want to physically hurt people with my belt. That was a kind of a joke.
Yeah. Well, I think it's disappointing.
That was a joke to all of you people.
Yeah. Footnote. But
it's from a psychological standpoint, it tells you about that person. Mm-hmm. I don't feel good enough about myself, thus I'm going to be a bully and pick on somebody else because they bought a gun or a gear that's less than what I think is super awesome. Ooh, Tatiana shoots an agency. It's nothing but a gussied up Glock. She must be nice to have that kind of money. I shoot a Taurus, which I don't.
Hey, I've had people come that have saved up for a year to a class with a gun that they could buy, and it was a high point. You know what? They did a fantastic job. And say what you want about it, but that high point ran fantastic. Yeah. So, you can't do that to people unless what they come with is truly unsafe or absolutely prohibitive for the program that they are participating in, because it's just not going to function, or it's against your rules. Please don't come to a concealed carry class with a bra holster on. There's that type of stuff that's going to
never will.
Well, that's a personal choice. We'll be fine.
Actually, side note, my family's been we have this ongoing thread about kind of an idiotic American thing, but like every day is something, like National Mustard Lovers Day. Today is National No Bra Day. So we keep sending each other. We find these. The other day was like step sibling day, and like somebody found like pumpkin chunking day. We have these very silly days. So speaking of bra holsters, today's No Bra Day.
You go. But, you know, I didn't know that this was the day for that.
I saw it. I found it this morning. I looked up I looked it up so I could add it to our family's thread of conversation, needless conversation.
October 11th. Now we know.
Yeah, that's it. Actually, my grandfather's birthday today. I just
Oh.
thought about that. So that's kind of a unique mix. I'll never forget either of them. So I often ask people when they're with us, the people listening, viewing, a lot of them are not kind of gun people. They come to this platform because we talk about, it's called the higher line. We talk about things beyond the material. Things that matter to me may not matter to you, and vice versa. And I say to folks, if the people listening or watching only got to interact with you once and this was it, what would you pass on to them?
What would I pass on to them?
Yeah, what would you pass on? If the people that are watching you or listening to you right now, if they only ever came this way once in your existence or theirs, what would you pass on to them?
Well, I would probably tell them that we live in a unique time and an opportunity on the planet where you, as a participant and someone that's alive on this planet, can choose to go to the range, can choose to walk into a gun store and just look at and have a discussion about the equipment that's there, and to recognize how unique that is in the world at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
Do that right here. And if you're listening or watching and you're a woman, I want you to really think about how unique it is to be a woman on this planet in this year, in this time, where you have the ability to do that very thing. Because we are a very, very tiny percentage of the female population that exists on the planet right now that can walk into a gun store, choose a piece of equipment, and go and pursue learning how to use it on our own by ourselves, and then has the opportunity to choose to have it readily available to protect and defend your life. And that's something that can be lost and taken away from us very quickly. So when you realize that while this may feel like a basic human right, it's only ours if we're capable of voting to protect and defend it. Even if you choose that it's not the thing you want to do right now, we're pretty much the last stronghold on the planet for women.
Yeah.
And our ability to make those choices for ourselves. And that's worth defending, even if you choose not to want to carry a gun.
I could not agree more. We've raised a society of young women that it's play with pink things. And even with all of the women's suffrage and changes in the way we view women, geez, 100 years ago, you ladies couldn't vote.
That's right.
And that's crazy. But we still, he'll protect me. The good guys will protect me, and that's often, sadly, not the case.
No.
So I agree with everything you just said.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is it's, even though they have the right, it's their choice to disregard it, and whatever happens, happens. The world is not a safe, fair place, unfortunately.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good stuff. How do people find you?
I made it really easy. As long as you can spell my name, you can find me pretty much anywhere.
Tatiana.
TatianaWhitlock.com. Same as Facebook and Instagram. It's just my
And
name.
we'll have it here, but it's WH, not WI, right?
Correct.
WHITLOCK.
Mm-hmm.
TatianaWhitlock.com.
That's right.
Awesome. I appreciate you. You're on Facebook, on Instagram, I think.
Yep.
Do you have a
Twitter,
YouTube channel?
No, but I'm all over YouTube.
Are you? Yeah, other people's stuff. So people can just Google you up. And your home base is Maine, but you are other places. So on your website, people can find classes and things of that nature.
Yes, I teach all over the country. And I go to ranges where I'm invited. I never solicit. So if there's a venue in your area that would like to host a class, I'm always looking for opportunities to go where there is interest.
I like it. I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate your dedication to passing on good information, not just to ladies, but to the men. Won't catch me dead on a range with a woman, but that was a total joke.
I know.
Actually, I told you about a very good friend of ours, Carly Cardwell. That's an amazing female teacher. But I think it's a big nut in this genre of our society to chew off. So it's a courageous thing. Good on you for doing it and being a good role model to young girls out there. You guys are interested in getting a hold of her, you know how to do it. If you're watching this on YouTube and you liked it, share it, pass it, repost it. And her parting words, I think, couldn't be said better. It is incumbent upon you to protect, promote, and proliferate liberties. Nobody should do it for you. It's your job as an American. Be well. Visit our website, carrytrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., Carry Trainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@carrytrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@carrytrainer.com or carrytrainer.com.